I know. So well, welcome to the Callithump Quilt Along. I'm so glad you're here. So Collins, and I live in Utah, although my heart is in Maine. I grew up in Skowhegan, Maine. My husband's from Bangor, and we are lucky to. My aunt left us a home there, so we spend a few months there every year. So some of Kristen's from New Hampshire, and so some of you might be from the New England area. Um, and actually I made this while I was in Maine this summer, and I had been shopping and I found this beautiful fabric that has the birds. So it has owls and it has crows or ravens on it. And I'm like, okay, I bought this because I love it, but I can't cut it up. I mean, we're quilters, we're crazy things, right? We cut things up and then sew them back together, but you kind of lose the whole point of the fabric when you cut it up. So I need to do something with it that was big enough so that I could use my fun prints. And I got thinking, and it's like, you know what? I buy novelty prints all the time and they just kind of stack up. I don't tend to use them as much as I should, but I really like them. Especially when I go to bits and pieces, right? I'm always buying something fun. So I developed this pattern, and it's great for beginners because there's really nothing has to match up. I mean, you sew it together and it's very forgiving. So tonight, what I thought we'd talk about a little bit as we get started is choosing fabrics. And so one of my favorite things about this is the first thing you want to think about, and I'm going to use this one to talk about. So this is a little Mickey Mouse one. Let's see if I can get back far enough here. So this is just 4 of the squares. Now I did turn these differently. And if you have blocks and you put them together, you will notice that it looks like a swastika, and I was not okay with that. So I turned, so look at the baby pattern, and they're turned differently on this one. And that was long before all the things that have happened lately. So let's talk about how I chose this fabric. So I had Mickey fabric, and so I put that in the center. And then this first arrow that goes on, that's called our pop fabric. And you want that fabric that you choose. We're using a big print, so you want this one to read mostly as a solid. It doesn't have to be a solid, but you want it to kind of read as a solid because you want it to be a big contrast to your novelty print. I did use a solid black here because with the white background, I thought that's going to give me the best pop. Okay, that's why I chose the black there. And then for the other 2 borders, I just chose some coordinating colors. So I picked the yellow shoes. I did that with the border. But honestly, on this one, I don't know if you can see, this blue fabric actually has sparkly silver stars in it. So it's very magical. And really, my husband thinks that the shine fabric makes this quilt he loves it, the shine of it. So that's kind of fun. And then when I think of Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse, what I think of is red. So that's why I chose red for the sashing. So for all sashing. And then on the outside of the quilt, you get to have it. I call these zinger borders. I don't know what you guys call them, but when you have just a little border that's just a little flash of color, I call it a zinger. And so that's going to be generally the same color as your pop fabric. So those 2 will be the same. And the outside border, you've got some choices there. So on this one, I used yellow. I was using up yellow, right? So I could use that. Or if you look at this quilt back here, I think you can see up here that there's another print that's got the jack-o'-lanterns. And that's just so I like to call these big prints hero prints. When people are designing fabrics and they're designing a line of fabrics, generally what they will do is they'll design one fabric first, and that's usually kind of the main floral pattern or what. I don't know. I always florals when I'm thinking about these things. And then all the other patterns work off that. So that's the hero fabric, and then you work off that. So that's kind of how I was thinking about this when I did the quilt. So in this one, the bird fabric is my hero fabric. that outside border is a great place to use another big print fabric. So I just call it the villain fabric. Okay, so you could use the hero fabric in the middle and on the border, or you can use a villain fabric, or you can just use, like in the Mickey Mouse, I just used a solid because I actually didn't have enough. I probably would have used the Mickey Mouse, but I didn't have enough of it. I only had enough to make those blocks. What a great way it was to use that up. All right, so what I thought I'd do tonight is show you a few more examples, because I have fabric that hasn't turned into quilts yet. You guys don't have stashes at home, do you? So this is kind of funny. I have I don't know if you guys know, but I have a quilt this month in the Quilt Maker for November and December. And it's actually a double star, thank you. And so I was gonna give that to a friend, and then I'm like, you know what? I can't give away my first magazine quilt. So I have to make her another quilt. And she's Jewish. So I found this Hanukkah fabric. And so my plan for this fabric is that I cut out the menorah. So this is going to be, so the menorah will be in the middle of my fussy cut. All right, so the cut will go around the menorah. So that's a very light background. So I want you to be able to see that. So as I'm looking at fabrics, obviously blues, right? But I found one gold, and the gold matches that gold perfectly. So the gold is going to be my pop color, and it's the only gold that will be in the quilt. So that will be like the black is in this quilt. It will be the first angle on the block, and it will also, I have enough of it to do the zinger border. And I think that that's going to be really effective. I haven't sewed anything. So some of you guys might know that I had knee replacement 6 weeks ago today. And I thought, I'm going to be awesome in 6 weeks. And all was going well until Monday when we discovered I had an infection. So things have come back a little, and I haven't feeling the best this week. So there has been no sewing. So these are my two. So that's what I have going so far. And then, so for those next two coordinating strips, then I want to use some blue. And I have this blue that's really a nice royal and print. And then I have to make a decision. So I have two other blues. So this one's a little bit darker, and it's got the kind of the stars in it. Or this one that is even a little bit darker yet. And it also kind of has little flecks of gold in it. So I'm thinking that that's probably what I'm going with, because I wanted a little more contrast between those two. And then I'm going to do something tricky. So this is not in the pattern, but I'm just going to warn you, because you'll probably see this quilt in a little while. I found at the same store they had this border fabric. So what I decided was, for the border, I'm actually going to cut those, but I'm going to put them in the corners. So instead of, having them meet like this and then the design will stop, I'm going to do something a little crazy, miter them. So it should look like it continues around. It's going to be exponentially harder to do that. So that's one of the quilts I'm going to make. Now, one thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I don't know if this person's here on the call tonight. I did have someone post on my page last night, and she's a direct quilt. And so she's got it almost all put together. It looks awesome. The birds I did directionally. So all the birds are facing, so they're like sitting up. That is a little bit trickier than the Mickey Mouse. They just every which way, and I wasn't caring about that. So there are instructions for how to deal with that. But if you're going to do a directional one, just make sure, lay it out first, because it's really easy to sew the strips on in the wrong way. Let me show you one more example. Now, I like to buy all sorts of, isn't this gorgeous? So this is a panel. It's got all these beautiful flowers. And so those are going to become the inside of another quilt. And at the same place, I found this. So this is like a photo of all the flowers. Isn't that gorgeous? So then my challenge for this one, I bought enough so I use it in any place on the quilt. But what I feel like this will be too overwhelming. My original goal was to use it as the sashing, but I think it would be really like in my face if I did this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as my pop, I think. And so it'll go right up next to the black. And I think that that will be nice. And then for the coordinating strips, I want this to be a little bit quieter than maybe I do usually. So I'm going to go with kind of a beige and a just a pink, mottled kind of pink. But then for my sashing, I think this is where I'm going. So it's got big flowers on it. And so originally I was thinking that I would use this on the outside border, but I think I can get away with this on the sashing and then go ahead and maybe put the floral on the outside border too. So you can go wherever you want. What I really wanted this quilt pattern to be fun, but to give you options of where to use those big fabrics. This is another one that's done. One of my friends did one, and I don't know if you can tell, those are cows in there. So she's a farm girl, and so she did the cow. So like here's the cow face, and she did solid black as her accent, and then she just used, I mean, she went with some really flowers, and those the orange and the flowers kind of, and the oranges and reds pick up, and then a blue. And I love how she used gingham as her setting. So it's very kind of down home, and that's a queen size quilt. So she's waiting for me to quilt that for her. Haven't gotten there yet. So does anyone have any questions? You have concerns or questions about the pattern? If you want to unmic yourself, I'm happy if you can raise your hand, or you can just start talking. There's not that many of us here. Kristen, do you have some ideas of what you're gonna do?
I have so many ideas. If you can see my part of my stash there. I have so many fabrics that this was like, oh my God, this is perfect for me. I can't wait to jump in with this. It looked like something I could move forward with quickly and get through it. But the Tina's Garden flowers that you had, that those look bigger. Are they bigger than the 6.5 inch strip?
I think that some of them are probably, I may cut them off a little bit.
Would you center them, or would you offset them and take a partial flower?
That's a really great idea. I might do that so that maybe like it's coming out like that. That might look really awesome, actually.
When you pulled that up, I was like, oh my gosh, that would be really cool to kind of, if they're too big for the 6.5 to.
And I just love flowers. Yeah, because I do think they're kind of big. So maybe, yeah, cropping it so that like I get a little bit more of the black and maybe a little bit of the flowers cut off.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I think that, so I actually have 2 of these panels. I think that I'm going to only use the more pink flowers that are down on this end.
Yeah.
I'm going to use mostly the pink ones in this quilt. And then I was thinking, okay, because these, let's face it, these are more my colors. I was thinking about putting these and maybe having some brighter fabrics and even doing a table runner or something. I've got a big long room table. I thought that'd be fun because it just makes me happy to see flowers.
Now I have to go buy that tomorrow.
Okay, we're our stash here.
I know. That's what I said. I'm like, I'm not buying any more fabric. Like, oh, and then I saw that. I was like, dang, I might even have it already. I don't even know.
Well, and it's funny because, there's a lot of, I bought this fabric. It was actually, we were at gilding and I bought this and it is so, I mean, look how big this white flower is. That's as big as my hand. That's huge. So but I thought this would be kind of fun because you can't cut this up too small or you just kind of lose the impact. But this would be fun if you did it in the squares and on the border and then just use some bright colors to kind of tone it back a little. I think that could be really fun. And then, we've all seen these. And
so a lot of
now these, I think, because they're more tonal, I think they're easier to cut up and just use in a regular quilt. Yeah. But if we center, if we center our big block on one of these cabbage roses and then use the purples and blues, they come in all the colors. But I'm like, I think that could be really beautiful with all these KFCs too. So
When you use so if you were gonna say use that case for your pop fabric, would you still want to go as bold as a black? But I feel like it almost needs to be like a deep, I don't know, like that.
I was to think that I would probably go purple.
Yeah,
Well,
like
and
a
we all
deep
know that but on this one, I would
eggplant.
probably, I think I would go more tonal with this one. It wouldn't be maybe as dramatic as contrast as this because
Right.
this fabric is pretty tonal. But I think I would do kind of a magenta purple for the pop,
Yeah,
and then maybe use a light purple and a medium purple or something, or
yeah,
the blues.
yeah. That's
But
so
yeah,
pretty.
I like big prints. It was kind of funny because I realized that I have two different Christmas sweater fabrics, as you know.
That's
So
what I was
I
hoping to
hope
make at
that
Christmas.
yeah, I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea. I mean, sometimes we buy these panels, squares, and we don't, we get them home and then we're not sure what to do. But most of them will fit these kind of sizes, and it will just kind of. I just thought we needed a pattern that used big, big squares, because
Yes,
everything it seems like lately all the quilts are little tiny squares. It's like, well, how to use this if everything's small? So
right.
I hope that you like the pattern. If you haven't bought it yet, it is available on my website. I did change the link in the blog. Some of you are having trouble. So there's a different link that takes you to a different page that's a little easier to check out. And so next week we're going to talk about cutting and have things cut, and we'll talk about how you actually put the block together. And so it actually goes together really quickly. But if you're doing directional, you got to be a little bit careful about that. So hopefully, if you've got your fabrics next week, bring them with you so we can do some show and tell on fabrics. The lady, if you see my webpage, maybe I'll bring up her picture and show it, because she used her focus fabric was Adirondack chairs. How good is that? They were kind of a red, white, and blue, and she's got a red fabric with stars and everything. It's very Americana, so super
I'd
cute.
like to see that.
Yeah, so find a fabric, go find a fabric. That's your first job, is to find your hero fabric, and then everything gets based off your hero fabric. And so, and if you catch the name Callithump, my husband doesn't like the name at all. And I said, well, it's about what it is. So a Callithump is a loud, riotous parade where people are blowing tin horns and all sorts of craziness. And I was like, that sounds party to me. And so this is a party on a quilt. And so you can use all the crazy fabrics and you can use them in all sorts of different ways. And they'll look together. And part of it's, deciding where to put them, because they really can mostly work together. So,
Awesome.
well, I will hope to see you here again next week. And on last week, anyone who has a quilt top done on November 30th, we will have a drawing for all the people who are here in the live meeting. Somebody's going to win a prize. Okay,
Ooh.
so we'll see. Yeah, so we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye, Kay.
Bye-bye.